Hello everyone, welcome to the TriStar Gym channel. Today's episode we are talking about overcoming fears and anxieties. This will be a part 2. My last Ask Me Anything, my last AMA, I did it also on overcoming fears and anxieties. I got a lot of emails asking me to follow up and elaborate on certain concepts. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I will be elaborating on past concepts and giving a brief summary of the first overcoming your fears and anxiety video. Now, in the last video, I talked about when you have anxiety, it's really just build up energy. Your body, when it senses a danger, it gives you that energy you need to fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, so if you're faced with an immediate danger, you might have to fight your way out. You might have to run away, or if you're walking across a field of grass and you spot a snake, it might be very wise to just freeze, right? And that anxiety that you're feeling is just that build-up energy that your body is giving you, that maximum amount of energy. It's releasing all that good stuff, the adrenaline, etc., all those hormones that are going to make you use all your maximum. It's going to allow you to use the maximum level of strength and energy and focus that you have to get you out of this emergency situation. Now, sometimes we're in an emergency state, but the challenge is not for hours or days away. So, for instance, maybe you have a speech you have to give. You know, fear of speaking publicly is one of the top phobias in the world. You know, across the world, people are scared to get up and talk in front of people publicly. And this might be days away, but it's torturing you for days on end, nights before. So my remedy for that is to get up and exercise. Go for a run, shadow box, wrestle. Anxiety is controlled by physical movement. Spend that energy, and that anxiety will just turn to an invigorating sense of higher energy. Instead of it being anxiety for me, how I translate it is having just way too much energy over the top that I can't think. I'm in a panic mode. Okay, so when I spend that energy, I taper it off, my focus comes back, I make less mistakes, but I still feel that sense of energy, but it's under control. Now, there are many studies on exercise versus antidepressants. So they give one group antidepressants, one group they make them exercise, and it shows that exercise will lower depression, just like antidepressant medication. And the same thing goes for anti-anxiety, medication. So people who take anti-anxiety medications, yes, their anxiety goes down, but people who exercise, also their anxiety goes down. So exercise is a proven way to control anxiety and depression. Now, exercise, for me, I think it's a must. If you're not exercising, you're not living to your full potential, mentally and physically. Okay, so there are countless studies out there that show the benefits of exercise both physically and mentally. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, they all come with crazy side effects that you don't want to have. All this because people don't want to exercise. Guys, make exercise a part of your life, especially if you suffer from anxiety. Exercise is a magic pill. Okay, it's not a pill. It's a magic solution. It's a great solution to many of the world's problems. If you're getting old fast, it's because you don't exercise. If you have low energy, it's because you don't exercise. If you're depressed, it's one strong reason is you don't exercise. If you have anxiety, probably you don't exercise. Exercise is a major factor. I won't say it's the end-all be-all solution. Okay, don't misquote me out there. But it is a major component to having a healthy life. Okay, so I also talked about overcoming your fear of flying. I said I would elaborate on it in a future episode. This is a different technique, a very different technique, because when you're on a plane, you can't get up and shadow box. And yes, you can exercise the morning of, but when that turbulence hits or the plane starts making a weird sound and you start getting really scared, I suffered personally from the fear of flying. I had a serious phobia. I'm telling you, extremely serious. I would get on the plane and my heart would beat like crazy. I would sweat. I would lose a few pounds from just the nervousness. I would land, in a wreck. I'll be like, if it was a 5-hour flight, I feel like I would have spent like 5 days on the plane. That's how tired I was, how exhausted I was of being in this scared state. So I was able to overcome my fear of flying by using several techniques, but this one major technique it's a pearl. It's a real pearl. I'm going to share it with you guys. I got it from a video program by a psychologist who is also a pilot. I don't remember the name of the program or the psychologist that made the program. I will try to look it up and put it in the description for those of you who are very interested in following up on it. I don't remember the name of the program. However, it was such a golden nugget. It was such a great pearl of wisdom that it helped me really lower my anxiety, and I practiced this technique a lot since then. And I did this, I think it was 8-9 years ago. And till this day, I practice it, and it really, really helped me. He called this technique, he called it not going into your own movie. Okay, a really simple technique. He says that, look, it's your imaginations that's driving you nuts. It's your imaginations that's driving you wild. It's your imaginations that's causing all this fear, your own personal imagination. And he says when your imagination starts to run wild, you're going into your own movie. You're making a movie inside your mind that's not the reality of what's going on the plane. And that's what's giving you all this fear. So for instance, somebody with a phobia of flying, and phobia is, the fear of flying is a major one. Okay, it's in the top 10 for sure. I haven't checked the statistics, but I guarantee you fear of flying is in the top 10. I know all sorts of people who are scared of flying. And when we're on that plane and we feel a little bump on the plane, we start thinking, hey, something is wrong with the plane. This plane is going to crash. Or you hear a weird noise. Planes make all sorts of weird noises. There's a lot of different type of mechanisms on a plane. And one of them might be, a little bit noisy or whatnot. And you hear this weird noise that you don't know how to translate it. And you automatically start visualizing that, hey, something is wrong with the wing. It's about to break off and we're going to crash. As silly as that might sound, somebody with a phobia, their imagination is running wild. You might be thinking, the pilot is asleep in the cockpit and he's about to crash this plane into a mountain somehow. And these wild scenarios are just playing out in your mind. And if you keep watching this movie, you will have a fear response, and that fear response will snowball and create a really serious problem with you on that plane. Okay, you'll start having some serious panic issues. I might even start to panic on the plane. So what he says, look, once that movie starts to play in your mind, stop and look around you. Is anybody else on the plane watching that same movie? You look at the stewardess, he says. She's just pouring some orange juice for a passenger. The guy on your right, he's just reading a magazine. The person on your left is playing a video game. The person in front of you is having a polite conversation with another passenger. Everybody is in a different movie. And look at the movie that they're watching. It's totally different than yours. They're not panicking. Everybody on the plane is just really relaxed and enjoying the flight. And you got to snap out of it and you got to say, hey, wait a second. I got to get into their movie. Nobody else here is panicking. Nobody else is thinking that the wing is broken. Nobody else is thinking that the pilot is asleep. Nobody else is thinking that there's a malfunction on the plane. Excuse me. Nobody else is watching my movie. This is my movie. It's not the true movie in reality. It's not a real movie. This movie, I made it up. I'm scaring myself. So I would keep snapping myself back out. Especially I like to watch the stewardess because the stewardess has been on countless flights. So whenever there was a bump or a noise, I'll just look at her. She's cool. Everything's cool. Look at her movie. Get back in her movie. Whatever movie she's watching, that's the movie you want to be in. Her movie is that everything is normal and these noises and bells and whistles and all these things going on, it's all normal. The plane is shaking, the plane is bouncing and all that. It's all normal. Now, this takes practice. I don't want to tell you that the first time around, it lowered my anxiety by, I would say, 35-40%. It really helped me a lot. Right off the bat, off the first flight. After I learned that technique, I just prepared myself to practice it and it really lowered my anxiety. It worked really well for me. Now I would say that I'm just a little bit uncomfortable on planes. I don't have a phobia anymore. I don't have a huge fear. My last fear really now is just turbulence. Taking off, landing, I'm really cool. I'm mellow. I can have a conversation on the plane. I could be really, really relaxed on the plane. I can enjoy the flight. I'll watch a movie. I'll read a book. I'll listen to an audio. I'll do all sorts of stuff everybody does on a plane. Before I couldn't. I was too panicked. I was too stressed to watch a movie. I was too stressed to listen to an audiobook. It was just too stressful for me. I'd have to kind of like sit in my own bubble and just get in my own head. And now I can really enjoy the plane. But turbulence still bothers me. And he gives another great trick for turbulence, a really phenomenal trick. He says, look, put a glass of water on your tray or a bottle of water. And he says, because people who are afraid of turbulence, they think that bump is a 10-foot, 5-foot, bump. It's really a minute little movement of a plane. It's not even 1 inch. And he says, look, put a glass of water. When turbulence happens, keep your eye on the glass of water. The glass of water will move just as much as the plane. It's a great visual cue to teach you how very little that plane is actually moving. Because if the plane were bouncing up 10 to 5 feet up in the air, bouncing up and down like this, the water would spill. The water would fly out of the cup, right? The water is reacting exactly like the plane. And you'll just see little tiny ripples. And yeah, the water will splash around here and there a little bit. and you might get a little bit of swaying of the water, but nothing major. And it'll just kind of like calm down your imagination because you have an objective view of exactly how much that plane is actually moving. So what I like to do is I always buy a bottle of water, and I always like to have a cup of water on my tray table, or a bottle of water. And whenever turbulence hits, I just turn my eyes to that bottle of water. I just see how little it's moving. I just remind myself that the plane is really not moving that much. It just feels that way. And it calms me down. It calms me down. Now, when you're avoiding going into this wild and crazy movie, it will calm you down. But there will always be this fear that, hey, planes do crash. It does happen. Okay, so this would be phase 3 of the program. Okay, so phase 1, don't go in your own movie. Phase 2, for turbulence, this is very specific. This is very, very specific for flying. Put that water bottle on your tray table. Put that cup of water and look at it every time there's turbulence. You'll see that cup of water. It's really going to give you a good objective view of what's actually happening. Your imagination is running wild again. It'll calm you down. Okay. Part 3 is accepting that catastrophe can happen once in a blue moon. So for instance, okay, I know that statistically flying is safe. I accept the risks of flying. However, if I go on a flight and every time I go on a flight, I imagine it crashing. I've been in a million plane crashes. I've been in countless amount of plane crashes. He says that, look, if a catastrophe is ever going to happen to you, it's going to happen just once. If you train your mind not to think about these things, it doesn't mean that it can never happen, okay? I can possibly get into a car accident. It can happen. If you're a competent driver, you have your driver's license and you're prudent, you got to go out there in the world and do your best not to get into a car accident, but it still can happen. The possibility is still on the table. It may be less than 1%. But we will see on the news that planes have crashed and cars have crashed. We will see it. However, the alternative is to live in a bubble and not live your life to the fullest extent that you can. I have to fly for my work. I have to fly to live my life. I don't want to live in a bubble. So we have to make this decision. There's an important decision in life. Are you going to live in a bubble, or are you going to take risks? Now, if you're going to take risks, sometimes bad things may happen. They're highly unlikely. But if they do happen, we want them to only happen one time in our life. We don't want to relive or pre-live an experience. So if something bad happens, let's say I get into a car crash, I don't want every time I get into my car, start thinking about the car crash. And think about it over and over again till it drives me nuts and I'm too scared to drive. I don't want to relive it 1,000 times, and I don't want to pre-live it. I don't want to think, hey, there may be another car crash in the future. And this reminds me of a very, very powerful quote by Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is the founder of Taoism, and this quote is often attributed to Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu says that if you live in the past, you're going to feel nostalgia, sadness, a type of sadness. If you live in the future, you're going to feel an anxiety because the future is uncertain. Bring the mind to the present. And that's really what this technique's about. When you're on the plane and you start to get scared, or if it's competition day and you start to worry, you're like, what's going to happen later tonight? You're in the future. Don't go in the future. Think about what you got to do right now. Now you got to have breakfast. Then you're going to go take a nap. Then you're going to go have lunch. Then you're going to go to the event center. Then you're going to warm up. You're not thinking about the fight. You're not thinking about the match. You're just thinking about what you're doing right now. Now, this takes practice. This takes lots of practice. You get really good at this. And over the years, I think I've gotten really good at it. People ask me, hey, how do you deal with this? You know, I get often asked in interviews, are you nervous for this? I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just thinking about what I got to do right now. And of course, I'm preparing for the future. I'm preparing. This is not about putting your head in the sand. If that's what you're thinking, you've got this totally wrong. Don't go to the extreme. We are thinking about the preparation. We are thinking about getting ready. But we're not thinking about the possible bad things that can happen on the night of the event or the night of the flight or whatever. I'm not thinking about horrible scenarios that can happen. I'm aware that they can happen. I'm preparing for them not to happen. I'm doing everything in my power to prepare. Okay? You got to think you have to be a Boy Scout, but a Boy Scout whose imagination is deeply under control. By Boy Scout, I mean you're really prepared. Okay, we're getting prepared. Confidence is competence. We're really getting ready. We know the answer to the problems. We're practicing them over and over again. However, we're not pre-living some kind of horrible experience, and we're not reliving a horrible experience. Now, to get good at this, you got to practice this in your daily life. And this reminds me of a quote from St. Augustine. St. Augustine gave a beautiful quote, and he hit this right on the head. He hit the nail right on the head. This quote is so deep that, we're going to probably talk about this over and over again in future AMAs. He says this, he says, look, I'm paraphrasing here. He says, look, I command my hand and it obeys. I command my hand and it obeys. When I command my brain, my mind, it disobeys. So the mind has a mind of its own, so to speak. He says, look, the hand is a body part. The brain is a body part. My leg is a body part. My body parts obey me except one body part. There's one body part that defies me sometimes. Now, okay, you could say that also for the body parts that are, the organs that are controlled subconsciously. He wasn't referring to that. He was talking about the things we do have control over. You have control over your mind, but sometimes you don't. There's a wrestling match going on there. However, you always have control of your arm. You always have control of your leg. Why does the mind rebel? Why does the mind control us back? Now, Socrates talked about this. Descartes talked about this. Many great thinkers commented on this phenomenon. But the way St. Augustine expressed it, I thought was very special. Why does my hand obey but not the mind? So I think it's practice. There is a struggle between the mind in itself. There are different parts to the mind, and you have to subdue them. You have to subdue these parts, and it takes practice. It's like everything else. It is a skill. People ask me, hey, are you nervous about this? Are you nervous about that? Dude, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm not nervous about, I always tell them, I'll be nervous on fight night. And I talked about in my last AMA that fighters are never in between rounds telling me that they're nervous or scared. It's always before. When you're in it, you're not scared anymore because you're in it. You're fighting. You're expending that energy. Remember we talked about it. It's a buildup of energy. However, you could be in it in your mind. In your imagination, you're in it. But you can't spend that energy. You're not physically in it. You're mentally in it, and that can drive you nuts. Don't get mentally in it. Focus, rather, on your preparation, on what's going on in the moment. And again, this is a practice. It's not an off and on switch. People can do this at varying degrees. Now, there's a great book on this, a really great book called With Winning in Mind by Laney Basham. Laney Basham was a silver medalist and a gold medalist in shooting. Okay, he's a great author as well. He's written some great books, one of them being With Winning in Mind. Now, when he won the silver medal, he was very tortured about it. He was very upset about it because he didn't get the gold. And he decided to do everything in his power to learn everything about the mental game. And after learning everything about the mental game, he won the world championship. He won a gold medal, in the Olympics. And his son also is a gold medalist champion. He also wrote about mental training. It's an excellent, excellent book. And he talks about only reliving the positive aspects of your training, only reliving the successful aspects of your skill training, and of course addressing problems, but rehearsing the solutions to those problems, not rehearsing the experience of failure. He's very adamant about never thinking about the experience of failure, and he goes into his book on why. He never wants to re-experience failure more than once. If he experiences failure once, that's it. That's the last time he's experiencing that, unless he absolutely has to. He's not going to torture himself by reliving or pre-living some kind of negative experience. However, he will rehearse the solutions to those problems. Okay, this is, again, I can't stress this enough. It's not about putting your head in the sand, doing like Homer Simpson. Homer Simpson's like, they're like, what are you gonna do? He says, I'm just gonna hide under a pile of laundry and hope everything works out. No, this is far from that. Okay, really, really far from that. It's about rehearsing the solutions and not living the consequence. Okay, mentally you'll be a lot more happy. You'll be a lot less stressful, a lot less anxious. Try these techniques if you're worried about flying. If you're worried about flying, when next time you're on a plane, practice not going into your own movie. Practice being in the movie, especially of the stewardess and other people around you. What movie are they watching? Oh, they're watching a nice, calm, relaxed movie. How do I know this? By their actions. Everybody is nice and relaxed. Nobody's worried. Now listen, if the mask from the top of the ceiling drops and the pilot's on the radio screaming Mayday and the stewardess is screaming for her life, listen, you're going to live that once. It may happen. But the alternative to that is to live in a bubble. That's a worse torture that's a worse consequence. So we take the lesser of two evils and we get on that plane because it's an acceptable risk. It's an acceptable risk, and not doing so would be a worse consequence. All right, guys, that is my tips for you on overcoming your fears of flying. And those two tips really, really helped me. I use them also for my competitors. I tell guys, don't go into your own movie. Don't go start worrying about what's going to happen. A lot of competitors, sometimes they go on the mat, maybe they get armbarred or something, and they're reliving that armbar over and over again. No, rehearse the situation, the escape to that situation. Rehearse preventing that situation. Rehearse all the positive things that are going to build courage, that are going to encourage you. And the word encourage means to build courage. You're only going to have those thoughts. You're only going to rehearse those thoughts. Never watch a bad movie. Only watch the good movies. Only watch the empowering movies. And I promise you guys, if you do this, you're on the road to having a healthy, a more mentally balanced and less anxious life. It works really well for me. Bad things happen to me all the time. I worry about the future like everybody else, but to a controlled level. Don't die in a million plane crashes. Don't pre-live a million plane crashes. And when you have a lot of anxiety, exercise. Increase your level of exercise. It doesn't have to be strenuous exercise. It should be a warm-up. Jumping jacks, shadow boxing, something that will cause you to sweat. You will feel a lot better. You will feel amazing afterwards. You will feel your mental acuity will increase, because when you have too much energy, you make mistakes. Okay, anxiety will lead to blunders. You got to keep that energy level under control. You don't want to be too mellow, and you don't want to be too anxious. And I hope these tips will work for you. Listen to this podcast and this video once again, twice, 2-3 times, and it will help you immensely. I promise it. I'm also uploading these now to iTunes. I'm also putting them up on SoundCloud. So if you want to follow it there, check out TriStar Gym channel. And a special thank you to TimTam.tech. They make the world's best recovery equipment, the world's best deep tissue therapy device. Check it out. I use it all the time. It is amazing. And thank you all for liking and sharing, and see you all in the next episode. Thank you.
Bonjour, mon nom est Marc-Élie Toussaint, je suis entraîneur de sprint depuis 23 ans. Je travaille au niveau de la vitesse avec Georges Saint-Pierre depuis 4 ans. Je viens de tester le TimTam, c'est le meilleur instrument au niveau du relâchement musculaire que j'ai testé de toute ma carrière. Je le recommande à tous.
When you train a lot, you get tight. The best way to loosen up your muscle is the TimTam. Hi, I'm Georges Saint-Pierre. I'm using the TimTam machine after my training to help me with my recovery.